Hey, what's up, everybody? This is just Isaacs from Geek-Stew and from the Ctrl Over C podcast. So I just want to put a short little clip here, just to let you know that normally we actually record our podcast a little bit of a different way. However, this week, for whatever reason, the way we normally do it was not working. So we actually ended up just doing it through Skype. So you might see a little bit of a difference there. For all intents and purposes, for this week, that is, you'll be seeing our Skype backgrounds and whatnot. And the audio quality isn't as good as our other quality of audio. Typically, we actually record through Discord. So just want to put this little clip here, and hopefully next week we should be able to go back to how we normally do it. But yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up and give you guys just a little small, brief heads up on that. But we still appreciate everybody doing that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right back into it.
Hey guys, welcome to the Ctrl Over C podcast. I am your co-host, Ike Isaacs, and I'm joined with a bitch named Salsa.
What's poppin'?
So, as we all know, Salsa is an asshole. We just know this to be a fact of life at this point. But we're going to start our podcast today. We're just going to talk a little bit about something we talked about last time, but we wanted to touch on it real quick just to get a little taste. Talk a little bit about the new Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Really, we didn't talk too much about it. We just kind of talked about what they had released at that time, if I remember right.
Yeah, I was going to say, in between the last recording and this one, they actually released the actual... It wasn't a gameplay trailer. You could tell it was all super scripted and pre-rendered. Ooh. But I will say, on the upside, it doesn't look terrible. I would not mind playing it, though I will say it's had a few, in the short time since the last podcast, controversies that have kind of popped up. For one, the beta. According to some sources, it is believed that you can only play the beta if you pre-order the digital edition on the PlayStation. No other console.
Which is crazy. Because obviously I understand like wanting to do console exclusives, but it's especially for like something like a beta. I feel like having a beta be console exclusive it's straight up just fucking segregation.
Not to mention, I mean, let's be real. It's one thing to be a console-exclusive game, but it's Call of Duty. They have been multi-console every generation for the last, 50
Yeah, ever since the games have existed.
And one start picking side. Exactly.
Right, and no, you're right. I mean, it's crazy to think that they're just going to suddenly start being like, oh, hey, we're just going to start cherry picking who we want to work with here and start giving beta exclusives. And obviously, here's a deal. Beta isn't that big of a deal, but it's a slippery slope. It starts with beta exclusives, which then starts sliding into, oh, if you buy the game for this console, you get X, Y, and Z content. Or if you get this game for a Z console, you get these content. And it kind of starts an issue there.
But it's important to remember, they've done that since the beginning. You know, Xbox and PlayStation have had, console exclusive benefits to games that appear on both consoles. It's rare, but they have done it in the past. Usually, no one likes it. It comes across as very stoking the flames of the old console wars.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember one game that I can remember off the top of my head that did that was Soul Calibur. I don't remember which one. But you either got Darth Vader or Yoda as the console exclusive fighter.
Man, I remember back when Soul Calibur had Link from Legend of Zelda on their GameCube version.
Yeah, that was actually, I think that was the same title because I think PlayStation and Xbox got either Yoda or Darth Vader, and then the GameCube port got Link, if I'm not mistaken.
No, those were two separate games. The GameCube one was a long time ago. The Yoda Darth Vader one, I want to say was Soul Calibur 4 or 5.
Let me see.
It was one of the newer ones. Would have been on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3.
So it looks like
We're a very factual podcast. We got to Google it right when we say it, just to make sure we're not perjuring ourselves in the court of law.
so yeah, Link was in Soul Calibur 2, but he was only in the GameCube port of the game.
I mean, I guess that's fair. He was very out of place in that game.
Like Darth Vader and Link were in place.
Compelling argument. I'll give you that much.
But no, I mean, but I think it still goes to show that and for instance, that one, because apparently I was just reading a little bit. Apparently, Soul Calibur 2 did really well for the GameCube because Link was in it. Obviously, it's not to say that Soul Calibur wouldn't have done well regardless, because I like Soul Calibur personally. But yeah, according to this, it says that Link was in Soul Calibur 2 as a guest character on the Nintendo GameCube version. And yeah, very cool. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's interesting. But I guess it still kind of goes to show that it's a slippery slope, console exclusive content. Now, obviously, the concept of like giving, okay, you guys can have Darth Vader, we'll take Yoda. That's a little bit different. But taking an entire format of gameplay and making it console exclusive is a lot different than making a character console exclusive.
I mean, and not to mention, we've only been talking about the fact that it's PlayStation exclusive. We've yet to even touch on the fact that it's only for digital pre-orders, not for heavily pushing the discless format so that people will start buying digital. Because let's be real, if you go on right now and try to buy a 5-year-old game digitally, it's going to be almost full price. They can get more money out of you that way than they could if you buy a hard copy game.
Yeah, because I mean, but to be honest, a lot of hard copy game sales these days are done within the confines of maybe GameStop and used game stores. I mean, I really don't know of any other specific vendors that are specifically known for selling, or I should say, specific brick and mortar establishments that specifically provide the service of, hey, we'll sell you these games. You know what I mean? It's not like the old days where you go to Blockbuster and Hollywood Video to rent video games. You either buy it or you buy it electronically. It's kind of a weird time we live in.
I mean, it's not bad. I do enjoy being able to just boot up my console without loading any disc in it. But I don't like the idea that the guys behind us, behind the scenes, are trying to convince us that is the only option for the future.
And honestly, part of me, like there are sometimes, like especially big games, and we're gonna do another callback to Modern Warfare, the new one. I prefer.
Stop talking about that one.
No, never. But literally, I preferred the disc version because if I didn't use the disc version of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, then I basically would just have a digital copy of the game, and that would be the only thing on my PlayStation. So it's crazy to think that there are games that they require so much dedicated space that it's almost impossible to have more than maybe 1, 2, or 3 games on a console, which I feel like the game sizes are getting bigger, but the size of our storage is not.
It is pretty disproportionate, Because I remember back when, I can't remember, my Xbox 360 had a 4 gigabyte hard drive built in, so I had to buy a 120 gigabyte extension. But nowadays, it's like, yeah, you can get a terabyte of memory or 2 terabytes. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And you're going to fill it up with. And the thing is, all it comes down to is they need to condense the file sizes. Some people have pointed out a lot of it has to do with, like with Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Warzone, they're not appropriately, what do you call it? Zipping their files, or I forget what the name is for it, but it basically reduces the size of the file while still being usable. I don't know. I'm not.
Compressing.
Yeah, compressing. I'm no tech expert, so I'm not gonna, go off on a tangent there. But I do think they're not making enough of an effort to condense their files down to a realistic standard.
No, I agree. I feel like there's a blatant disregard for file suppression and general formatting, because I mean with pardon me, just generally speaking, I mean you have to think when you release a video game, it's mostly about the game itself and the content you're providing, but it's also you also have to think about the technological perspective of you're providing an additional piece of hardware or software to enhance a video game, so you need to be able to work within the confines of what you have. And
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are not doing that, and they're trying to work in excess of what they are being given, and it's just causing issues.
Well, have you ever heard of a game called Yandere Simulator?
Yes.
It's I'm not going to get into all the controversies that dude is in, but one thing I will point out is a lot of people point out that the way he codes and the way he implements new ideas, instead of reformatting the previous coding to be more condensed, he keeps adding on to it to the point now that the latest versions take like 10 minutes to boot because of all the programs and commands it has to go through before it can actually show you what's happening.
Jesus.
I've heard of people with like 1080 Ti mega monster builds still having issues running that game. And I get the feeling if Call of Duty doesn't completely rework their infrastructure, at some point they're going to reach that. You're going to have people who only have Modern Warfare or Warzone downloaded on their console because they cannot afford any more space.
Right. And honestly, I feel like that sort of bleeds into kind of, we're talking about the future of Call of Duty and with Call of Duty Cold War, but I think it also kind of, sorry, I dropped my
Bless
damn
you.
head. I dropped my damn headphone. Uh, but it also kind of speaks to the future of just Call of Duty just in general. Are we able to proceed? Because obviously you look at Modern Warfare and you look at the shortcomings on the technical side, and you say, okay, it's a good game. I can deal with the shortcomings, technically speaking, but you can't always deal with those shortcomings because you only have so much room.
It's a classic straw that broke the camel's back metaphor. At some point, they're going to do something, and it's just going to topple the house of cards.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned the future of Call of Duty, given that they're going back into the past with their next game.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of to expand upon that, and I guess even move on to our next topic here. We talked about a little bit of a recap. Salsa talked about the beta, but also something that we talked about a little bit before the podcast was so I guess they had a trailer that included a scene of Tiananmen Square, and then it was censored afterwards. They removed the first trailer and then put up a second trailer, and the second trailer censored the Tiananmen Square portion, or just removed it altogether, I should say. Is that right?
Yeah, and we're not going to get into the whole back and forth of is it ethical, is it right, should we criticize a company for profiting off of, China. All I'm going to say is, I'm going to clarify what happened was they put out the original trailer, and for a brief, like 3 second period, you could see the Tiananmen Square incident, which, everyone knows by now. It is a historical moment that to this day China has been trying to wipe from everyone's memory. Well, China didn't like that. They told, I don't know who runs the Call of Duty company there, but they basically said, listen, if you want us to allow your game in our country, you will delete any mention of Tiananmen Square. And in my opinion, a rational person would have said, okay, here is a China exclusive commercial, no Tiananmen Square. It's just not there. Didn't happen. We're not going to mention it. Instead, Call of Duty was like, yeah, let's just change the world trailer so we're censoring the entire world's view of Tiananmen Square.
Right, and like you said, we won't get too much into the back and forth because we did talk about it a little bit, but I just kind of my viewpoint, because Salsa kind of mentioned his viewpoint. Basically, it's trying to approach a level of global censorship, which fundamentally I don't agree with either, but also. And I'm not some long live Castro or anything like that. I'm not a communist, but
you better not be. This podcast does not. We don't allow that kind of shit here.
But I think that we can all agree that fundamentally speaking, capitalism is not working, and this is unfortunately the cost of capitalism. We rely so heavily on China as a sister country, and not a sister country, but you understand what I'm saying, as a partner in a lot of our trade, in our exports, and a lot of our everything. So, for instance, video games is a very prominent thing that we have an issue with globally, that, in kind of like we were talking about here, we live in a capitalism society where what's most important is the dollar bill. And it doesn't matter how we get that dollar bill, we're going to do everything we can to get that dollar. And
now,
this is
I do want to jump in and say capitalism in and of itself is not the biggest problem, so much to say as the existence of a capitalist society has led to those who would seek to abuse capitalism for their own gain. And this is a great example. The fact that they are willing to work with a dictatorship because that is what capitalism is about. We are profiting off of other people and their suffering. But
right.
That is to say, I don't naturally oppose a true, a free market, in my opinion, as I do. But obviously, you have to have some restrictions. And the government in recent years has talked about limiting companies from working with China if they cave into their demands.
Right.
I know.
And right.
No, I was going to say, I know a big one was apparently there was some not law, but like legislation they were talking about passing, which would make it illegal for any Hollywood, what do you call them? Like film studio? It would make it illegal for them to work with China if they were censoring any of their work or caving into their demands. And it would cost them. Granted, no one would go to jail. Let's be fair. Rich people don't go to jail. They just get fined.
Right. And sometimes they don't even get fined.
It's a little slap on the wrist, Bad boy, go home, try not to work with, communist dictators again.
Which, and obviously we're I'm also not saying that there's any specific world type or government type or anything like that is inherently better or right or wrong. But I just think that our current method is it encourages a hoarding of wealth, and that inherently just creates issues just overall, in my opinion. And I think that's also kind of bleeds into the issue we're talking about, which is these video game companies, they just want to make money, and they're willing to work with anybody to make money. And that willingness to work with anybody to make money leads them to being susceptible to the demands of foreign governments and foreign entities. So it is what it is. We won't get too crazy into that, but
So let's not get too big into politics. I'm not looking to get our show canceled in the first 3 episodes.
Right. I know what the name of our episode is going to be now. It's going to be It's going to be COD, Capitalism, China.
Well, that's a pretty apt summary so far. And that's funny, we still have a bit more not Chinese news, sorry, Call of Duty news to talk about before we get on to actually more interesting topics.
And China. But yeah, the next one is the rumored price increase, the misleading headlines, and the only $69.99 for a version that transfers the next gen. So I'm assuming what that means is that there's a version of the game that's going to be $69.99 that is good on the old gen, but is also going to be acceptable on the new gen. Is that right?
You are correct, and I do want to point out, to the audience, literally what we do is I write an outline for what's going on in the episode, and verbatim he just read off the entire point number 5. Rumored price increase, misleading headline, only $69.99. Not
Hey,
even.
I made it
really
sound
tone
good.
it in this episode. But yeah, that basically what it was is they were putting out a version of the game which cost $69.99. And what it would do is you could play it on the Xbox One or the PS4, and then when they release it for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One X Series 300, whatever, you would be able to get the new version as well.
Gotcha.
And the controversy is not really, because that seems fair.
Right.
The real controversy lied in the fact that a lot of outlets were reporting it as Call of Duty raising, 30, 40-year long pricing of new video game to $69.99, which kind of sparked a little outrage. People were thinking, oh, am I going to have to start paying 70 instead of 60 for my new games?
Yeah, I mean, which obviously I guess it's going to happen eventually because inflation. But yeah, and I feel like
No. I refuse to let that happen. Inflation exists, but average income has not gone up, so I refuse to allow them to raise the price of video games.
Billy, you can raise the price of video games when I start getting paid more, you commie bastard.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like I'm gonna sit around and let some fucking communist tell me what I can and can't do and how much to pay for my fucking Call of Duty next gen shooters.
That's right, man. But what I was going to say is it's honestly, it sounds like a typical case of the news put out an article and people just didn't read it, and then they assumed the worst. Which,
I mean, don't get me wrong, they did phrase it horribly in the headline.
right, and they typically do because that gets people's attention. But, and honestly, and this is something I guess that kind of pisses me off, just generally speaking, is I hate it when, like, because don't get me wrong, there are multiple people at fault for these issues typically, because you have the people who make the headlines and they intentionally make the headlines not necessarily misleading, but they make them somewhat inaccurate in order to evoke a reaction from people who are potentially reading. Because sometimes it is accurate, it's just not 100% truthful. um, and it just and then obviously that's shitty, but then people just don't read the article and they assume that the headline is gospel. You know what I mean?
It is a tough line because you look at a headline and you should be able to read it and understand what the gist of the story is. But
What the jizz of the story is.
Yeah, they should be able to realize the cum of the story right off the bat. They should feel that hot blast right on their chin and just comprehend. But that's not how it works anymore. Now it's about you got to tickle their taints, give them a little spark a little outrage in their mind, so that when they open the story and it turns out to be something else entirely, they still blow a gasket.
Right. And then most of the time they just kind of forget what you said actually happened, and they're like, that's all right.
Because, like, I can't tell you how many YouTubers I've seen who've come out since that story saying, like, oh, how dare they raise the price of my Call of Duty? And then I go to the source they link, and it literally says, once you read down a bit, that's you can still buy it for $60.
Right. Like, oh, okay, well, this is awkward.
Reading is not a lot of people's strong suits, I have found out.
Seriously though, it's that is an accurate statement. Reading reading's not exactly my what you would say strong suit, but let me tell
More of
you,
a visual learner. This
I'm
is
a
cool to have pictures.
I need to skim through the picture book if you don't mind. But no, yeah, and I think that was just probably a general misunderstanding because A, misleading headline, B, mentally deficient people reading the headline and not understanding what's going on.
And also, Call of Duty in general. We all love to hate on Call of Duty because they do just some dumb shit every now and again.
No, yeah, I mean, if I had $1 for every time the producers behind Call of Duty did something stupid, I would be a reasonably wealthy man.
No man needs that much money, Isaac.
Yeah, I I would be like Walter White levels of wealth.
But
Um,
we should probably move on. We've talked enough about Call of Duty to last a lifetime.
that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say for right now we're gonna move past that, and probably our last topic for today, and this is probably going to bleed into our next episode for sure. But we're gonna talk about how we feel. Or we're gonna talk about our feelings. We're gonna talk about Assassin's Creed. Now, I'm gonna let Salsa jump in here because obviously I've played some Assassin's Creed, but I've not played like all of it. So Salsa, you tell your feelings first, and then I'll tell my feelings.
All right, so I'll start off by saying, for one, I have the entire series, save for like one or two odd games. Like, what was that one? India? Assassin's Creed India? I don't have that one, but I have the rest. So by all rights, you should. I would skip one because it's really slow and boring. But anything two and onwards, up until a certain point, in my opinion, is, I'm not going to say a masterpiece, but if you look at it from a lore perspective, it's a really well written story. I love the alternate history. It's not even alternate history, it's literally, it takes key points of our history and paints them in a different light. Like, what if, the Revolutionary War wasn't just, America versus Britain fighting for the rights of, a new country being born? What if there was a hint of assassins and a secret mission to save the world? And it's it's very fun, and I've always loved.
Right, yeah, and,
What do
and
you
you've
feel?
always spoke, or I was gonna say, you always spoke very, very highly of Assassin's Creed. I mean, you've always, I mean, even I remember when we were younger, you would play some of those games, and you're like, oh yeah, and you tried to get me to play them, and not that I was unwilling, but I was always deep into something else. But one of these days, I need to get around to playing because I'm actually kind of interested in Assassin's Creed Valhalla because I played God of War, so I'm kind of interested in the Nordic part of that.
I mean, I highly recommend it. You have access to my whole library of digital games. Go ahead, start playing. In my opinion, I would not play the first game,
Right.
but if you want to, you can. If you don't, I can just send you the novelization. It's much easier to get through. But I recommend just start with the Ezio trilogy, which is 2 Brotherhood and Revelations. You could probably knock them all out in about a week if you tried hard enough. Because the games, if you just focus on the story, they're usually not super long. But I'm telling you, you will not regret it. And text me, tell me which one you're on, and I can tell you which game to go to next, which ones to skip, which ones to play.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to because I know some of the other stuff we were wanting to talk about is like, we're talking about like which one we like the best. And I'm like, well, I've not really played any of them, so I'll probably have to go through and play some of them at least and kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. But and I've always also heard some like good stuff about them, just generally speaking, like from a just like from a overall perspective. You even kind of mentioned it, their overall historical takes are generally pretty accurate. their representation of the architecture is actually pretty accurate too, which is something we've talked about before.
Yeah, and it. Ooh, sorry, had something in my mouth. What I was gonna say is, they're very well created games. You can tell early on that they kind of struggled to hit a fluid kind of gameplay, a learning curve, so to speak.
Right.
But once you get into about Brotherhood and onwards, every new game they're adding new additions that are well thought out, work very well into the concept of the games. Like, I would say the peak of Assassin's Creed gameplay would be about. That's tough. If we're talking classic Assassin's Creed, I would say Assassin's Creed Rogue. It was literally just a reskin of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, but it flowed very well. Though I will say, if I had to pick a favorite, it's kind of a controversial opinion, but I really liked Unity. Assassin's Creed Unity was one of my favorites only for the fact that it had the most definitive outfit selection.
I would say what you had the most definitive outfit selection. What does that even mean?
I'm gonna be honest. I am an absolute whore when it comes to cosmetics. I love being able to customize my character, give them new outfits, customize their weapons. Assassin's Creed Unity was the perfect one for that. You could change your pants, your overcoat, your hood, your gauntlets, your shoes, and the weapon selection was amazing. I will say Assassin's Creed Revelations was one of the last ones that allowed you to have like such a wide, for one, daggers. Assassin's Creed Revelation, and I think was the last one that allowed you to use a dagger. But Assassin's Creed Unity, for one, you could use a musket as a melee weapon. You would literally grab it by the barrel and swing it around and bash people's heads in with the butt of it. And then you could still use it to snipe people from like 100 yards away. It was great, and I love the concept of a co-op Assassin's Creed, although it didn't work. I could never find anyone to play with.
But I'll say if I started playing it, maybe.
I mean, fuck yeah, let me know, bro. If you start playing those games again, I will go through them with you because I'm always looking for another excuse to go back to the old ones.
I'm sure you are. Oh man, but honestly, and I mean that's honestly one of the good things about Assassin's Creed is that they're also, especially right now. I mean, obviously you've been able to purchase them over time, but I've even seen because that's Ubisoft, isn't it? That makes those games.
Yes, we try to pretend it's not Ubisoft, but it is Ubisoft.
Well, I say whoever's in charge of the pricing of those games is an absolute marketing genius because. Like I see a lot of things like on Xbox and PlayStation, whatever else, that like you can get really good fucking deals on those games, especially the early games. Like they are whores. They were like, well, whatever price, give me $1, make you holler type deal.
I mean, literally, Assassin's Creed, the Ezio trilogy, they put it out there for like $20 when I bought it. That's 3 whole ass games for $20.
That's insane, dude.
But should we go into the newer games, or should we just cut right there for this episode?
We can maybe talk a little bit about let's see. Maybe we can touch on Valhalla real quick. Maybe just to kind of get a little bit of a taste on what's about to come. And then next episode, we can go in a little more depth. Maybe I can start playing one of them to get a better idea of what it's like. But so obviously, we actually mentioned Valhalla a couple times, but just in passing. So what do we have any concrete details about the game or that you know of?
Everything I've read so far is simple. It's set in what do they call that, Scandinavia?
Yeah, like that area.
Yeah, It's going to be follow, Vikings, and it's going to be a little more true to their origins, less of the, European myth that Vikings were just brutal monsters who would storm and kill everyone and rape children.
Oh shit.
But in my opinion, less so about the Vikings. Valhalla is going to focus on the ending of the Layla Hassan trilogy. And for people who don't play Assassin's Creed, how it works is all the history stuff you play from a simulation. In the real world, you're an actual modern day human being. You go into a simulation and you get to play your ancestors' memories. For the last two games, Origins and Odyssey, you got to play as Layla Hassan, who is going back in time, playing, or in simulations, reenacting the lives of not her ancestors, because we kind of moved past that from a lore standpoint. You'll understand when you start playing how that works, but yeah. And this time it's going to be the end of her trilogy, in my opinion, which is good because it's time for some new blood. I'm interested to see how they're going to end her story. And
right.
And obviously, you can kind of guess how the gameplay is going to be. You're going to get to run around with an axe and raid villages. Simple.
Hell yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Damn. And, and honestly, and like I said, I'm kind of excited for that just because I have a feeling that there will probably be some, because all of the games, they not that they touch on mythos per se, but they do touch on.
You don't know.
What's that?
In the Assassin's Creed universe, pretty much all of the legends we know of, like Zeus, Persephone, the Hydra, they're all loosely based in reality. Like in Odyssey, you actually get to meet Hades, Persephone, Poseidon, because they're not legends like gods. They're just precursors, the ones who came before humans.
Okay, I gotcha. Because I know, like, in some of the early games, and obviously, I guess, spoiler alert from anybody who doesn't know this, but they talk about the Apple of Eden, and how Adam and Eve they existed, but, like, it was an advanced civilization, wasn't it?
Yeah, Adam and Eve were proto-humans before, because how do I put this? In that universe, humans were created by this race of people known as the Isu, ISU, and they created us as some type of monkey hybrid that could be easily controlled. We were basically slaves.
Yeah.
And eventually we were able to earn our freedom, and I don't know, a lot of stuff happened. Adam and Eve were basically the first two who rebelled against their masters. You'll learn more about it once you start playing the Ezio trilogy, but the further you get in the series, the more insane the stuff gets.
Which, and, like, because I know a little bit, because I remembered, I'm trying to remember who it was, but I remember a little bit because I watched the very unfortunate live action movie. And
We
the
don't talk about that.
Yeah, for real. But the live action movie, it had a little bit of, I guess some ties to the original. So yeah, that was fun.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, once we're off the podcast, we can talk about it, and I'd recommend starting with the Ezio trilogy. I'll play it right alongside you.
I'll need to. I'll say I will need to go back and because here's the issue that I've had trying to play those games, and this is just kind of a brief side note before we end. Obviously, it's nothing against the games themselves, because generally speaking, the games are very good. But I remember I tried playing. I think it was either 2 or 3. I want to say it was probably 2. Maybe it wasn't. I remember they were Italian.
That would be either 2, Brotherhood, or Revelations.
It was probably 2 then. But I remembered I was playing as an Italian, and I remember like some building burns down, and it was like your uncle's or something like that. I don't know.
That sounds just like the intro to Brotherhood.
So maybe it's Brotherhood, but I just remember my primary issue with the game is that, not that it was an issue per se, but I had a hard time getting, like, because sometimes you gotta hook somebody to get into it, and
Yeah.
I sometimes had a hard time getting hooked into the game itself. Not to say the game is bad by any means, but there were times where I'd be like, I really want to play this, but it's just not catching me. So I think I just really need to sit down and really really focus, turn off the ADHD for about 5 minutes just to get going.
Like, I'll be real with you. It didn't help that you started with the middle of the Ezio trilogy. If you start at the beginning, you're going to feel much more invested. You'll understand what everything, and I'll explain to you basically what the first game did and all the important little details, but I promise you, we'll sit down, we'll play them together, talk on the mics and whatever. You're going to love it once you start getting into it, because early Assassin's Creed is like reading a really good book. You get into it, you love the story, you love the characters, you feel emotional weights behind their actions.
Do you know the levity of your actions? The war crimes.
Geneva Convention, more like the Geneva Suggestion.
That's right. Oh man. So I think we can comfortably pause it there. Next time, my goal is going to be, between now and the next podcast, I'm going to try and sit down and try and play at least some of, like, probably start with like Assassin's Creed 2.
I will warn you, you're going to download the Assassin's Creed Ezio trilogy because it's a bundle. It's remastered, but you will be horrified at the early 2000s graphics. Even though they're, remastered, it's still kind of horrifying to see some of the facial expressions.
Same, but no, but hopefully between that then and now I can sit down and I can actually start playing that a little bit, maybe get a little more knowledge and experience on it. I think that
just in time for next week's rant when I go off on the new ones.
Yeah, I said the new ones, the pyramids.
Oh boy, we're gonna have a lot to talk about next week.
Fun. All right, so I guess really what I'm gonna say now is, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. My brain stopped working for about a minute. So no, what we're gonna say now is follow us on social media. You can follow Salsa at Red the Writer on Twitter. I am at Pint Size Beast on Twitter, and of course you can follow Geek-Stew on Twitter as at Try the Stew. And if you use Facebook, we do have a Facebook. It's at Geek, or it's not at anything. It's not Twitter. It's you just search Geek-Stew, you'll find it. And you better fucking subscribe to our YouTube channel. I swear to God.
You heard it here, folks. You have no choice in the matter.
If you don't subscribe, I will hang myself.
All right, calm down there.
I'm kidding. Go tell Salsa he's an idiot on Twitter. I mean, go tell me I'm an idiot on Twitter. We're just gonna rock and roll. And next week we're gonna talk a little bit more about Assassin's Creed. Obviously, I have the magical list here of stuff that we're gonna talk about. May have an interesting conversation about Resident Evil at some point, but that may have to wait until the week after.
The way we're moving right now, we're chugging along, but it's slow progress.
Hell yeah, that's what I like to hear. Anyways, all right. Well, I'm gonna sign off. This is Ike Isaac signing off. Any last words for the folks out there, Salsa?
None in particular. I would just say, yes, a good old-fashioned cowboy saying. A good way to get out of get out of a hole you've dug for yourself is stop digging.
That is true. Stop digging. All right. Catch you guys later. Have fun. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Don't get coronavirus. And keep on growing.
Yeah, boy.